The Kepri trade nexus drifted like a jeweled bruise in the Virex spiral, too valuable to destroy, too symbolic to ignore. Cargo spines glowed along its hull, and millions of civilian lives pulsed inside its pressure-sealed rings. From the Virex flagship Dominion of Will, Strategos Carthuan Vex studied the tactical projection with measured satisfaction. Only one human battalion. No carrier group. No planetary shields activating. No encrypted signatures associated with the human elite units the galaxy whispered about in fear. Just a neat cluster of infantry transports, defensive drones, and a modest escort flotilla. Vex clicked his mandibles together. "Confirm," he said. "No classified Terran formations inbound." The aide's frills fluttered. "Confirmed, Strategos. Terran Expeditionary Infantry. Designation, Regular Forces." A ripple of restrained amusement passed through the council chamber. "So," Vex said, leaning back, "the Predators send grazing animals to guard their den." Commander Elias Rourke watched the same space from a very different screen. Kepri filled the forward view of the command deck, its lights steady, unpanicked. He liked that. Panic was contagious. Calm required discipline. "Status," he said. "Battalion deployed across rings 2 and 3, Captain Moreno replied. Civilians secured. Supply lines locked. No anomalies." Rourke nodded. "Rules of engagement remain unchanged. We hold. We don't chase." Moreno hesitated. "Sir, Fleet Intelligence says the Virex expected more." Rourke allowed himself a thin smile. "They usually do." The Virex probe wave arrived first, sleek, aggressive craft designed to draw reaction. They screamed toward Kepri in tight formations, weapons hot, broadcasting a challenge in a dozen trade languages. On the Dominion of Will, Vex raised a claw. "Limited engagement only. Test their response. I want to see them flinch." The probes crossed the designated perimeter. They vanished. Not exploded. Not dramatically obliterated. They simply ceased to exist, erased by overlapping fields of fire so precise that the debris clouds barely touched each other. Silence followed. Vex's tactical display recalibrated, numbers adjusting downward far faster than expected. "Analyze," he snapped. The aide's voice wavered. "Human defensive grid is adaptive. They're not reacting. They're executing pre-planned responses." Vex frowned. "Against a probe wave?" "Yes, Strategos." On Ring 3, Sergeant Hale didn't look up as the shock tremor rippled through the deck plates. He adjusted his stance, checked his rifle's diagnostics, and keyed his squad channel. "Contact neutralized. Reload cycle complete." "Copy," came a chorus of calm replies. No cheers. No tension release. Just routine. A younger trooper glanced at Hale. "That it?" Hale shrugged. "For now." Vex authorized the second phase, armored assault craft, troop carriers, heavy plasma support. A force sufficient to crush most frontier defenses. Still restrained. Still measured. "Now," he said, "they will escalate." The humans did not. More regular infantry deployed. More drones detached from their racks. Human ships repositioned with quiet efficiency, slots filling in a defensive lattice that grew denser, not louder. The Virex assault hit the perimeter. Human fire met it, not in waves, but in layers. Shields failed under sustained pressure. Virex command cohesion fractured as channels filled with overlapping casualty reports. "Strategos," an officer said urgently, "our projections are off. Human response times are within microseconds of impact." "They're anticipating, not reacting." Vex stared at the screen. "Impossible. They lack precognitive systems." "They don't need them," the officer whispered. "Their formations assume maximum threat at all times." Rourke listened as reports streamed in, his attention divided between 3 tactical maps. Losses were minimal. Acceptable. Predictable. Sir, Moreno said, voice low, Virex heavy units are withdrawing from Ring 2. Let them, Rourke replied. Don't pursue. Confirmed. A junior officer leaned forward. Commander, permission to request Special Forces support? Rourke turned slowly, meeting the officer's eyes. His voice remained even. Denied. The officer swallowed. But sir. This is what we're here for, Rourke said. And they're watching. On the Dominion of Will, the Council chamber had lost its earlier confidence. Tactical projections flickered as Virex units fell back in disorder. Strategos, the aide said, mandibles tight, forward divisions report catastrophic attrition. Human units are holding all civilian zones. Vex's claws dug into the armrest. They should be breaking. They are not elite. They are not. Sir, another voice cut in, shaking, we intercepted an open Terran channel. The audio played. Resupply in 20. Maintain perimeter. Same drill as Varos. Varos. A minor skirmish, barely recorded in the Galactic archives. They speak, the aide said softly, as if this is familiar. Vex felt something cold settle in his thorax. They haven't escalated, he said slowly. No, strategos. Then why, he asked, staring at the casualty curves plunging into red, are we losing? On Kepri, the civilians never saw the worst of it. The station's lights never dimmed. Life support never wavered. To them, the battle was a distant rumor, quickly suppressed. Rourke stood alone for a moment after the reports slowed. Outside the viewport, wreckage drifted like ash. Moreno approached. They're pulling back across the line. Rourke exhaled once. Good. You think they'll try again? Yes, Rourke said. They haven't understood yet. Understood what, sir? Rourke watched the stars, his reflection faint in the glass. That this isn't us trying. A new transmission indicator pulsed on the console, Virex command priority, encrypted but urgent. Rourke ignored it. For now, silence was more instructive. The Virex regrouped at a distance that signaled calculation, not retreat. New formations appeared on long-range sensors, denser, heavier, bristling with weapons designed to shatter planetary defenses. The galaxy watched as the collective committed real strength, convinced the humans had reached their limit and would finally reveal what they had been hiding. Commander Elias Rourke studied the incoming data without comment. He did not raise his voice. He did not call for reinforcements that carried classified markings. He simply adjusted the deployment grid and sent 3 concise orders. Rotate companies. Lock logistics. Prepare for sustained contact. Captain Moreno blinked. That's it, sir? Rourke nodded. That's enough. The first Virex salvo struck like a storm, energy lances tearing through empty space where human ships had been seconds earlier. Terran vessels slid into new positions with disciplined grace, each movement anticipated, each gap already covered. Human fire answered, not louder, not brighter, just constant, compressing the battlefield into lethal geometry. On the Virex flagship, Strategos Carthuan Vex felt certainty slip. Why aren't they responding to our pressure, he demanded. Increase output. Force adaptation. An officer hesitated. Strategos, they already adapted. Our strikes are falling into prepared zones. Vex's mandibles tightened. They had no time to prepare. They did, the officer replied quietly. Before we arrived. The second wave pushed closer, deploying assault carriers and shock troops in numbers meant to overwhelm. Instead, they found corridors of denial, kill lanes that shifted as soon as they were identified, fire that followed probability rather than impulse. Virex units advanced, stalled, and vanished from command feeds with frightening regularity. A damaged carrier limped free of the engagement, broadcasting surrender codes. Against protocol, Rourke allowed it through. The captured Virex officer sat rigid in the interrogation chamber, chitin cracked, eyes fixed on the human across the table. Rourke offered water. The aliens stared at it as if it were a trick. "You should have sent your hunters," the officer said at last. "The ones the galaxy fears." Rourke considered him. "Why?" "Because this," the Virex said, gesturing helplessly, "this is annihilation." Rourke's expression didn't change. "This is containment." The alien's frills quivered. "Then what do you call escalation?" Rourke paused. "Something we haven't done." Outside, the battle widened. Virex Command attempted flanking maneuvers, only to find human supply craft doubling as mobile bastions, crews shifting roles without confusion. Ammunition never ran dry. Casualties were evacuated with mechanical precision. Nothing about the defense suggested desperation. Moreno watched casualty projections flatten. "Sir, they're throwing everything short of planetary bombardment." "And still measuring," Rourke replied. "They want us to blink." "Will we?" "No." On the dominion of will, Vex slammed a claw against the console. "Why are their losses stable?" he demanded. "They're under continuous assault." An analyst answered, voice hollow. "Their doctrine assumes attrition as a constant, not a crisis. They plan to lose these numbers." Vex stared at the data. "Plan to lose?" "Yes, strategos." "And plan to keep fighting anyway." The galaxy's observers began to whisper. Commentators noted the absence of panic, the lack of dramatic counterstrikes. Humanity was not roaring. It was enduring, and the endurance itself was breaking fleets. A final Virex push collapsed near Ring 2, human units closing gaps with quiet efficiency. When the last assault signal faded, the battlefield fell into an uneasy calm. Moreno exhaled. "They're pulling back across all vectors." Rourke nodded once. "Hold positions. Medical priority stays green." A junior officer leaned closer. "Sir, we intercepted a Virex command burst. They're asking if we intend to deploy special forces." Rourke allowed himself a brief, humorless smile. "Tell them no." The reply went out, simple and unembellished. On the Virex bridge, the message landed like a verdict. Vex felt the weight of it press down on him, heavier than any defeat. "They are not escalating," he said slowly. "They are demonstrating." The realization spread through the chamber, cold and unmistakable. If this was humanity's baseline, then the galaxy had been measuring the wrong thing all along. Far from the command decks, Rourke watched the stars steady themselves on the display. He knew the Virex would not forget what they had learned. That was the point. "Sir," Moreno said quietly, "what if they come back with everything?" Rourke met his gaze. "Then we'll still be here." Outside Kepri, the human line held, unbroken, unremarkable, and terrifying in its restraint. The Virex withdrawal was not orderly. Ships disengaged along fractured vectors, drives flaring too hot, formations breaking as survival replaced doctrine. Across the galaxy's observation nets, analysts watched in stunned silence as a power that had dominated corridors for centuries fled from a force that had not advanced a single line. Kepri remained intact, its traffic lanes reopening within hours, its population barely aware how close annihilation had drifted. To the Virex, the silence of human pursuit felt louder than any barrage. They had expected vengeance. They received permission to leave, and that mercy unsettled them more deeply than defeat. Commander Elias Rourke kept his battalion exactly where it was. No victory speeches echoed across channels. No banners unfurled. Medics worked. Engineers repaired. Logistics officers recalculated inventories with practiced efficiency. When a junior lieutenant finally asked if they should press the advantage, Rourke answered without looking up. "We're not here to conquer. We're here to end the problem." The lieutenant nodded, understanding settling slowly. Around them, human ships held formation, ordinary silhouettes against the stars, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred at all. That normalcy became its own kind of message, impossible for observers to misread. On the dominion of will, Strategos Carthuan Vex faced a council stripped of certainty. Casualty projections had stabilized only after retreat. Territory maps glowed with losses that would take decades to recover. They allowed us to disengage, an advisor said, disbelief raw in his tone. Vex stared at the data. Because we ceased to be a threat, he replied. The words tasted bitter. He realized then that the humans had not fought to destroy his fleet. They had fought to educate it. The lesson was written in wreckage and restraint, and it would echo through every strategic academy in the collective. A formal transmission arrived from the Galactic Mediation Authority, requesting clarification. The galaxy wanted to see what everyone feared. They asked, politely, whether humanity intended to deploy its special forces now that hostilities had peaked. Rourke listened to the request, hands folded, expression unreadable. Decline, he said. State that escalation is unnecessary. Moreno hesitated. They won't understand. Rourke met his gaze. They already do. They just don't like what it means. The reply went out, concise, unadorned, impossible to misinterpret. Humanity was finished fighting, and it had never started trying. The Virex sent their own message shortly after, stripped of threats and ceremony. Vex appeared on the channel, posture rigid, eyes dim. We misjudged you, he said. We believed your strength lay in secrets. Rourke answered calmly. Our strength lies in preparation. Vex's mandibles twitched. Then what are your elites for? Rourke paused, choosing his words with care. For situations where preparation fails, he said. This wasn't one of them. The silence that followed carried more weight than accusation. Across the network, the implications settled like gravity. Negotiations concluded quickly. Reparations were agreed upon. Trade corridors reopened under revised accords. The Virex accepted monitoring without protest, their pride dulled by understanding. Observers noted the absence of triumph in human posture. There was no demand for tribute, no insistence on spectacle. Humanity took security guarantees and stepped back. For the first time since first contact, the galaxy recalibrated its threat models. Not upward, but inward, questioning assumptions that had guided strategy for generations. Fear shifted shape, focusing not on human legends, but on human consistency, the relentless competence that required no drama to function. As Khepri returned to routine, Rourke walked the command deck one last time. Crews moved with relaxed precision, jokes murmured, systems humming. Moreno joined him at the viewport. They'll tell stories about this, Moreno said. They already are. Rourke nodded. Stories fade. What doesn't? Moreno asked. Rourke watched a freighter slip into dock, lights steady. Habits, he replied. And we have a lot of those. The battalion would redeploy soon, assigned elsewhere, another quiet line held, another crisis rendered mundane through discipline and time. Far away, in Virex space, academies rewrote curricula overnight. Simulations adjusted parameters. New doctrines emphasized avoidance over dominance. Instructors struggled to explain how an enemy could be so devastating without appearing fierce. Cadets asked where the monsters were. Veterans answered honestly, there were none. Only soldiers who trained as if chaos were ordinary, who treated violence as a managed variable rather than a proving ground. That answer disturbed them more than any myth. It suggested a universe where power was not theatrical, where survival favored those who prepared endlessly and spoke softly afterward. On the final day before departure, a civilian message reached Rourke, routed through diplomatic channels. It was brief, grateful, unremarkable. He read it once, then archived it. Protection, he believed, should feel invisible to those it served. As his ships aligned for jump, he addressed his battalion. Good work, he said. Same standards next time. Acknowledgements followed, calm and professional. Engines flared. The human formation vanished into folded space, leaving behind a quiet station, a chastened empire, and a galaxy forced to reconsider what ordinary truly meant. The galaxy did not celebrate humanity's restraint. It studied it. After Khepri, data streams filled with revised threat analyses, debates, and hurried reclassifications. For the first time in recorded history, an emerging power had shattered an established empire without spectacle, then stepped away as if bored by the outcome. Markets stabilized. Borders recalibrated. Fear settled into a colder, more durable form. It was no longer sharp panic, but a lingering awareness that changed how admirals slept and how politicians chose their words. Commander Elias Rourke felt none of that on the day the after-action reviews began. He sat in a quiet briefing room aboard the transport comm Horizon, watching footage scroll past with clinical detachment. Every maneuver, every casualty, every second measured and weighed. The numbers told a clear story. Preparation had beaten ambition. Discipline had broken arrogance. When the screen dimmed, Rourke closed the file and rubbed his eyes. Victory had a way of feeling smaller once the noise faded. Captain Moreno lingered by the door. "Command wants commentary," he said. "Strategic takeaways. Lessons learned." Rourke nodded. "Send them the basics." Moreno hesitated. "They're asking about special forces." Again. Rourke sighed softly. "Tell them the same thing. We didn't need them. That won't satisfy them. It isn't supposed to." The report went out stripped of flourish, a dry accounting of logistics, rotations, and decision thresholds. Nowhere did it mention heroism. Nowhere did it frame the engagement as extraordinary. To Rourke, the omission mattered more than any claim of dominance. Wars were not won by myths, but by habits sustained under pressure. Elsewhere, those habits became the subject of obsession. Alien analysts replayed recordings of human formations holding steady while surrounded, of medics moving through fire as if following routine drills, of commanders refusing opportunities for escalation that other species would have seized instinctively. The conclusion unsettled them: humanity treated crisis as baseline. Their soldiers did not rise to the occasion. They simply arrived already there. On Virex Prime, Strategos Carthuan Vax addressed a chamber that felt smaller than it once had. His authority remained intact, but its edges were dulled. "We encountered no deception," he said, voice controlled. "No hidden fleet. No unleashed terror." He paused, letting the truth land. "What we faced was competence, repeated until resistance failed." The Council absorbed this in silence. Defeat could be rationalized. Understanding could not. A junior counselor broke the stillness. "What do we do if they decide to advance?" Vax answered without hesitation. "Pray they never find a reason." That sentiment spread faster than any official decree. Along contested borders, patrols withdrew. Provocation ceased. Empires that had once tested humanity's resolve quietly rewrote engagement protocols to avoid doing so again. It was not submission. It was calculation, informed by a new variable that refused to be ignored. Back aboard the comm Horizon, Rourke walked the observation deck alone. Stars drifted past, indifferent and constant. He thought of the soldiers under his command, of their lives folding back into routine assignments and unremarkable futures. That anonymity was the real reward. "Sir," Moreno's voice came through the intercom, gentle. "Incoming transmission. Diplomatic channel." Rourke accepted it. A mediator appeared, posture careful. "Commander, the Assembly wishes to extend formal commendation." "Unnecessary," Rourke replied. "There is concern," the mediator continued, "that humanity's restraint may be misinterpreted. Some believe you are hiding greater intent." Rourke considered this. "We always are," he said calmly. "Everyone is. The difference is whether intent requires expression." The mediator blinked. "And yours?" "Is to be left alone," Rourke said. "And to leave others intact when possible." The channel closed with polite confusion. Rourke knew the message would ripple outward, dissected and debated. It would not comfort them. It was not meant to. Weeks later, as his battalion dispersed, Rourke stood on the hangar deck watching troops depart. No speeches marked the moment. Just nods, handshakes, shared silence. A young sergeant paused before boarding. "Sir," she said, "people keep asking what comes next." Rourke met her eyes. "The same thing," he answered. "We stay ready." She smiled, reassured, and moved on. The deck emptied. The ship hummed, patient and unassuming. Somewhere beyond mapped space, threats still waited, unknown and unimagined. Humanity had tools reserved for those moments, forces shaped for problems that defied preparation. But until that day arrived, ordinary soldiers would continue standing watch, unnoticed and unwavering. In the end, that was the lesson Khepri left behind. Not that humans possessed monsters, but that they did not require them. The galaxy learned to fear the quiet confidence of those who saved their extremes for last, and hoped never to witness what followed when restraint finally failed.